Envision a community where every individual's greatest strength lies in their empathy and resilience. At the Crestwood School District, we prioritize these qualities, recognizing them as fundamental to both personal and academic success. Here, empathy and resilience are more than just lessons. They are the principles that guide our interactions and enhance our collective experiences. Join us as we delve into the transformative impact of these essential skills, exploring how they shape our students into empathetic leaders and resilient learners, ready to always navigate and enrich the world around them. Today, we delve deep into the roots of empathy and resilience and explore their impact on our daily educational journey. Welcome to District Discourse. Good day, Crestwood family. Discipline is often misunderstood, but imagine it as the art of instilling resilience and fostering emotional strength. I am Dr. Mosallam, your superintendent and the voice of today's District Discourse, where our conversation turns to empathy and resilience. With the support of our experienced panel, we will uncover how discipline approaches to empathy and resilience can reshape our educational environment and enhance student life. I would like to introduce our panelists today who are at the forefront of supporting not only our students, but our staff and community when it comes to resilience and empathy. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Roni Abdulhadi, our principal at Crestwood High School. Thank you for being here, Mr. Abdulhadi. So happy you took time out of your day because I know how busy you are.
My pleasure.
Also want to introduce Mrs. Marwa Haidar, assistant principal at Crestwood High School, who works side by side with Mr. Abdulhadi. And again, thank you for being here because pulling you away from the school, I know when you go back, it just adds more work to your plate.
Thank you for having me.
To my left, I am very happy to introduce Mr. Scott Casebolt, our principal at Riverside Middle School. And Mr. Casebolt, again, just as everyone else, thank you for being here and taking the time out to have this conversation.
My pleasure.
And I would like to introduce Mrs. Sarah Collada, assistant principal at Riverside Middle School, who works side by side with Mr. Casebolt. And again, as Mrs. Haidar, I'm sure taking this time out, you're going to go back to your office and have some additional things you have to cover. But I appreciate all four of you being here. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Collada. So let's just get into a conversation. You know, as a school district, we, over the years, have learned that resilience and empathy are two things that if we foster that learning of our children early, it'll help them later in life. And the reason why we asked for you four panelists to be here is because you work in the secondary setting at Riverside Middle School and at Crestwood High School, where the idea of resilience and empathy is so key and crucial. I just want to take a few minutes and I want each of you just to give your own personal definition of what resilience and empathy is and how that impacts you and your decision-making daily, not only with our students, but with one another, our community, our staff, so on and so forth. And if it's okay, I'd like to start with you, Mr. Abdulhadi.
Thank you. Well, I think when it comes to resilience and empathy, I think it's really about getting to know our students. Really, it's a fresh start at the high school when they enter with us, and to be able to really get to understanding that student individual and setting aside the academics and schooling, although very important and vital to their success. We want to get to know our students on an individual basis, really to know what their story is or where they come from, to be able to help them succeed at Crestwood High School.
Yeah, and that's, you talk about something that's so important, it's that whole relationship building. You know, because too often when people think, we started out the conversation talking about, you know, discipline. There's a misunderstanding. It's not about discipline. It's about building that relationship with your students and your community to understand what is the underlying cause. You know, in our previous district discourse, we talked about restorative practices, which fits right into the whole idea of resilience and empathy. So that's a very good point. Mr. Casebolt, talk to us from your perspective what resilience and empathy means to you.
So I think for me, this is my 17th year, I think, in administration. And when I started out, I think I believed that everything, you had a student code of conduct and everything would be black and white. And I quickly learned that everything I think I've ever dealt with is gray. And that involves the fact that we do, as Principal Abdulhadi stated, you look at resilience in a situation, you look at empathy, you have to meet kids where they're at. You have to consider many factors when in dealing with discipline, and then you're not one and done. We're dealing with children, and that's what we have to sometimes remind ourselves, myself included. We have to build up that resiliency. They're not going to get it perfect the first time.
That's great, and I like the aspect of looking at things as not one and done. Like, people make mistakes. Children are going to make mistakes. There's a reason why they come to school, because we're going to help them identify and understand that certain decisions that they make are not the best decisions to make. But at the same time, you said something that's very key and crucial, and it's something that I think we all emphasize. It is not black and white. It is about identifying what's the root cause and how can we support. So thank you, Mr. Casebolt and Mr. Abdulhadi, for your insight on, your beliefs and philosophies on resilience and empathy. And I think both of you touch upon the whole aspect of relationships and helping, our students grow and become, successful individuals. But I'd also like to talk about this with our two APs, our assistant principals, Mrs. Haidar and Mrs. Collada. One thing I'd like to say is, I believe the most difficult position in any school district is the assistant principal. And the reason why it's one of the most difficult positions is because it is truly a middle manager position. You're in between, your principal's guidance, you're trying to support teachers. Like, you're always, as an assistant principal, you're always like the first go-to. And so your job, your role, things can get piled up. And I know when you're trying to emphasize resilience and empathy, it takes even more time. It's not as simple as, oh, you're in trouble, here's what's gonna happen. No, you wanna get to the root cause. You wanna understand what's going on. You wanna build those relationships. So with that said, I'd like to get your take, like, with resilience and empathy, what does it mean to you? So let's start with you, Mrs. Collada.
So here at the middle school, a lot of our students don't have the development yet to see beyond their mistake. So I think a big thing that we really stress and we strive to work on with our students here is, okay, you made a mistake, you had this problem, how do we bounce back from that? Which I think is a huge piece of resiliency. So you did something wrong, how do we make it right? How do we grow as a person? And that's something that we've really been stressing and working on here at Riverside. Not just, hey, I can suspend 1,000 kids. We don't want to do that. We want the student to learn from their mistake and come back to be a better person the next day. As for our empathy, once again, we're still battling with, and I know everybody gets sick of hearing it, COVID, right? Our kids still have some issues from COVID where they didn't have as much socialization outside of their school, or maybe even they had a little pod of kids. So just getting them to see things from another's perspective is something that we've been working really hard on with our social work team and our counseling team to help our students. But our whole a whole building, we are working on that with our students, because we recognize that, helping our students' social emotional growth isn't just a social worker's job, it's everyone's job, and we all are in it together. We're a team, we want our students to be successful.
You touch upon the aspect of getting our students to a level where they can reflect and understand. And I think that's the key to resilience, but it's also the key to being an empathetic person. Your ability to see how your actions impact others. And I think, and you are right, middle school is probably one of the toughest ages to teach that, because so many of our children at the middle school age, they're coming into their own. They're going into, they're going from a small, a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond. And they want to establish themselves, which is normal.
Yeah.
But they need guidance on how to do that. So that's very key and crucial. And I'm glad you brought that up from the middle school perspective. Now from the high school perspective, Mrs. Haidar. When you work with students at the high school, there's probably even a larger expectation, a bigger expectation of how they socially interact with one another, because they're much closer to getting out into the real world. And sometimes you have to like maybe speed up that process a little bit. So just talk to us from that perspective, like your thoughts on resilience and empathy and how that impacts you on your decision making on a daily basis.
So I primarily work with the juniors and seniors, which are the oldest ones in the building. And my expectations obviously for them are a little bit higher since they're the oldest. But for me, it's relationships and getting to know the students even as early as their freshman year. And it's not a one size fits all, you know, and that's what trying to get students to understand as well. Why did he get this and I get this, or so on and so forth. But again, getting to know the students and why they're acting the way they are and what's going on with them. So that way they understand that I'm trying to look out for them, you know. And for the most part, I do feel that my students do feel that way, that I do my best to obviously work with them. Obviously suspension is the last thing that we all want to do. But relationships are the most important thing to me, for sure.
That's excellent. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to open this up, you know, just right when a thought comes to your mind, please just, you know, have the conversation. And what I'd like to open it up to is let's talk with each other about some of the struggles you've had moving away from the mindset of discipline, consequence, and moving towards the mindset of, you know, mistake, education. And not only some of the struggles you've had with the students, but also maybe with parents to change that mindset that we as a school district, we're not looking for a mistake and then a consequence, but we're looking for ways to help educate everyone of why and how we are doing what we're doing. So,
I mean, I'll jump in.
Yes.
Hopefully make a splash. I think for us, it became apparent, obviously we're at the middle school, so we have the younger kids at the table being in secondary. I know we made a conscious effort as a team in looking at our discipline records over the last couple of years, office referrals, suspensions, and we wanted desperately to reduce that number. Proactively, our entire team created expectation slides that we spent the first 2 weeks of the school year teaching so that every student received repeatedly what the expectations were, what the consequences were at the back of that, but explaining the whys. And that included empathy, resiliency, academic success, bullying prevention, effective communication, conflict management, and so on. I think it's a combination of about 30 slides at this
Positive
point,
phone calls.
dress, proper dress, and such. So we decided to take like the teaching approach. And those slides are reviewed after long breaks or holidays. They're reviewed if we're struggling based on data with a particular issue, maybe disruptive conduct, for example, or things like that. We'll reteach and hopefully see an improvement, which our data has improved a ton this year.
Which it has. I can contest to that the data here at Riverside Middle School has dropped significantly when it comes to office discipline referrals. So let me piggyback on that. And this is a question for the both of you. How have you brought the teachers into the fold with resilience and empathy? Because let you know, if I'm a teacher, I'm seeing my students much more than you. Mm-hmm. I have more of a captive audience than you do. You know, you're seen as the administrator. How have the teachers adopted and addressed this to support your initiatives?
So I know our teachers are presenting those slides in their classrooms. I had the opportunity to actually sit inside of a classroom while they were taught. The students actually were very actively engaged. They were asking a lot of questions. A big one was about hoods, but we went into that for a while. With that, the teachers really supported it, and they even stated, you know, this is what we're agreeing on to do as a team. So as a team, they came together. We even gave them some time to plan grade level in order to support each other and to support those students. Another piece is that we're bringing our teachers into a lot more of our meetings and a lot more of them. So things like our MTSS system, which is our multi-tiered system of supports, which is something we put in place for our students who are struggling either behaviorally or academically, because we are trying to be significantly more proactive than reactive, especially with the new curriculum, the new things we've been looking forward to. We've been bringing teachers into our IEP meetings. We bring them in, which is our individualized education plan meetings. Our 504 meetings, which are for our students who don't qualify maybe for IEPs but still need more support that is federally protected. With that, our teachers have a better understanding of what is expected for them and for their students, and are able to better implement those things in their classrooms. We've also been using Navigate 360, which is something that our teachers have been utilizing to help our students grow in the different CASEL areas, to help their emotional intelligence and their ability to interact with their peers better.
And that's great. I mean, and I think what you are truly emphasizing is that it takes a whole village. And that, you know, our role as educators isn't just to teach the math, science, arithmetic, you know, so on. So it's also to teach and to support and to develop young minds into productive citizens through a process not of, you know, consequential based, but of we're going to help you understand this and why. And again, the teachers, I mean, I always say in any school where there's a success in the reduction of ODRs, it has to be a unified stance by everyone, teachers, administrators, parents, everyone.
And we shared the monthly PBIS data last year and also this year as well. And we made sure that the teachers understood the highest type of offenses, most frequent. And we knew that we had to have them being on the front lines. They not only created their own grade level and classroom expectations, but then that led to school-wide expectations. And that for us has been transformational. I think it's a big piece because we're all on the same page. We're all speaking the same language, and we're reaping the benefits this year.
Very good. So I have to turn it over to the high school. So talk to us about how you have been able to assist in like some of the struggles you've come across with when it comes to changing the mindset of everyone, students, staff, parents, that yes, there are rules, we have to follow these rules, but our process is to teach and to support young men and young women who are still children to build that resilience to get through the struggle, but also to be empathetic of others.
So at the high school, when in my first year, you know, we always, when what I'm learning in years past is to always kind of set up those expectations, develop those norms. And we want to do that within our classroom setting. But what we did at Crestwood is we came as a team, we said, hey, guys, let's develop something that we're all going to work on together. How are we going to change the culture of our school that everybody's going to be held accountable for? Parents, students, staff. And what are some things as a staff that we want to do that are really going to bring in all our kids and make them understand that they're part of this family? So what we came up with was the Charge Your Way. And these are some norms that every single staff member agreed on. We came to creating them together, and that everybody was going to abide on. Greeting our students, making them feel welcome, making them understand what Crestwood is about, having that Crestwood pride. I think that was the essential thing that we did. But also, through that journey, I kind of began to realize that sometimes, and I was guilty of this myself, is sometimes empathy and sympathy are words that are often confused. Mm-hmm. You know, where sympathy is just kind of feeling sorry for an individual and understanding, but where you bring in empathy, where it's really beginning to listen and hear what that person is going through. And this is what we taught our staff, to building those relationships. Every student has a story to tell, and they dig deeper. Yes, parents should be part of the process, but parents also rely on us to help build that resiliency, help their child navigate through school. And I think through our Charge Your Way, through our beginning of the year conversations, through our professional learning communities, we're diving into that all together to help these students and teachers kind of build that resilience, build that empathy, and be able to work together, but really trying to understand the kids. And like you said, it takes a village. Although the parents need to be involved, but we have the onus of doing everything we can within the time frame that we have those students in our classroom. I think is huge.
Before I go to you, Mrs. Haidar, I want to jump on something you said, which I think is so crucial and important. The difference between being sympathetic and being empathetic. Throughout my career as an administrator, I've always had a student or staff member or parent who have come to me and they told me their story. And it was a heartbreaking story. And I had to learn that if I'm sympathetic, then I'm not going to take the opportunity to help build, grow, and teach. Where if I'm empathetic, I take that opportunity to help build, grow, and teach, but doing the best I can to try to understand where that individual is coming from. Because no matter what, we could all, God forbid, break a leg. But how one person handles breaking a leg is completely different than how another person. So you can never say, I know how you feel. You can say, allow me to understand how I can help you. And that's the difference between being sympathetic and being empathetic. And that is so key and crucial. So key and crucial. Because I can say, after doing this for 26, 27 years, I now come across former students of mine who come to me and say, I was your biggest nightmare when you were a principal. And I would look at them and say, well, or like, you know, and they're in the professional realm today. And I'm like, well, you're doing really well now. And they're always, what they always say to me, which is always gives me reminds me why I do what I do, is they always say to me, you were hard on me, but you helped me understand why you were being hard on me. And I'll never forget that. And that's empathy. And the irony of it all is I didn't realize that was empathy at the time. I just thought it was the right thing to do. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I think to build on that is that when the sympathy, yes, you sympathize with them, you understand, but when it comes to empathy, it's being able to do the same thing. However, the expectation is still there.
Yes.
You expect them to learn, and that's what they did in your case, is those years that they went through, is that they understood that that was a reason for that. And that is what true empathy is.
I could not have said it any better. That's great. So Mrs. Haidar, as the assistant principal, as like I said earlier, I mean, you guys get the brunt of it. You get the first, because when they're not happy with you, then they go to the principal, and we know how that works. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why you have a team. That's why it's not always just one person making every decision. Talk about how you, as an assistant principal in the high school, dealing more with students you are trying to help transition into university, the real world, entrepreneurship. How have you been able to navigate this resiliency and empathy and with some of the struggles that you had?
So again, it's getting to know their story. I feel I taught for 15, 16 years, and I was big on relationships when I was in the classroom as well, because once you build that relationship with a student, they'll do anything for you, right? And they understand that you care about them as a human being rather than just, you know, a kid in your class or at your school. And so before I went into administration, that was my biggest hesitation. Am I going to lose that with the students? Because that's the best part of the job. And I didn't. We're, you know, always around. And then I realized that sometimes now I kind of get to know students on a different level. When they're sitting in your office and you're getting to know their story. One of the struggles is sometimes when you're a teacher with 34 kids in your class or 30 kids in your class, you don't know every student's story. So when a student is maybe sent to me and I know their story and I've built that relationship with them, the teacher might get a little frustrated as in why did this kid, you know, why wasn't something more done or whatever. And so I do have those conversations even with teachers to help them understand our students, because again, we're all a team and we all work together for the success of all the kids.
You bring up a very valid point. You know, as a teacher, if I'm a secondary teacher, let's say I have 30 kids per classroom, I teach 5 different hours. I have 150 students.
Yep.
So sometimes it's hard to build that relationship with all 150 students. But at the same time, if they're receptive to your conversation, like, hey, I know Yusuf is struggling. Let me just talk to you a little bit about what Yusuf's going through. And they're receptive to that. That's empathy. That's like, okay, how can I help Yusuf? How can I, or if something happens that a child takes to heart and it's insensitive to that child. It could be cultural insensitivity. It could be religious insensitivity. It could be just insensitivity of not really understanding where that child's coming from. And that teacher or the staff member or even a parent is like, oh, help me help them. Help me help them. And I think that's the key there. I mean, we can go on this topic forever because, as you all know, resilience and empathy is the key to helping our children grow. It's the key for helping us all grow. Before we close out, I guess I would just, I'd like to hear from each of you. Use this opportunity to send a message to the community, to others, on what they can expect from you and how you are working to help their children. Because the reality of it is, in the role of administration, you can do 9 things that help 9 different children. But there could be one situation that people will highlight that you did everything in your power, and people want to highlight on that because they may not have been happy with the decision. Because in today's world of media, you hear about the 1, not the 9. So I'd like you to take this opportunity to talk to the community and to, about what they can expect from you all the time.
I'll jump in again.
All right.
Make a splash.
I'll make a splash. I think having people understand what our purpose in our mind is. I didn't get into administration or education to discipline students. I want less time doing that and more time. My best time is when I'm in the classroom, whether it's an evaluation, walkthroughs, interacting with the teacher, interacting with the kids, thinking in my mind how I can support the bigger picture. Academic achievement, that's our purpose. Our purpose isn't to suspend kids. I think that's my message. I hate that part of the job. I hate investigating things, but sometimes it's a necessary thing. Safety is of utmost of importance, of course. But I think for people to understand what we see in our mind, none of us, I think, got in this role to discipline or to suspend kids. Our role is improving academic achievement, supporting teachers, supporting events and clubs and sports and everything that is a part of the school experience.
That's great.
And I would say, to kind of jump in on what Scott was saying, to keep an open mind. I think it's really easy to sometimes fall into the default of, this is how I think it should be done, or this is how it was done when I was younger, or this is the way we've always been doing it. We have to understand that these are a new generation of student. And as we grow and learn and more studies come out with more data of how things should be done, we want to make sure that your student is as successful as they can be. We want to make sure everyone's student is. It's the same thing I'd want for my own son. I think every time I have a child in my office, I try to think about, how would I want someone to speak to my son if he was in trouble? How would I want him to be treated if he was in trouble? Or if he was in need, because not every time the students in my office are they in trouble. How would I want someone to speak to me on the phone if my son did something wrong? This is coming from someone who has had her son do something wrong and has had a principal call them. We have to be more open-minded and be ready to understand that we want our students to grow, and sometimes the way in which we're going to accomplish that isn't through traditional means. And that's something I want the community to take into account when they're thinking about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Great.
Well, for me, I just want our parents and the community to know that it's double, maybe triple the work when it comes to handing out consequences and suspensions if we have to, and that's always our last resort. No administrator, no teacher wants to deal with that negative behavior or things happening within the school. It's a lot more work. We're more open and enjoy and glad to have those conversations with kids, see them in the hall, see how they're doing, joke with them, laugh with them. That's the most rewardful time of the day for us throughout the day, and that's what we all want to do. But you know, before judgments are passed or highlighted about something negative or consequence that was issued out, then maybe, you know, come on into the school, come talk to us, come volunteer, visit, see what's going on in our school, and you'll really understand that we are in there as a team. We are in there to help every child succeed and help every child and student any which way we can. And we welcome that because it is a true partnership, and we want it to be a lasting partnership, and need to understand that yes, consequences are going to happen. And you know, there's repeated and there's that progressive discipline piece, because you also got to take into account, I'll give you Crestwood for example, 1,400 students. 1,360 of them are coming there to learn and do things they need to do and be part of that positive environment. And we're there to support them just as much as we are to support a small group that might be having difficulties. But again, come on in, see what happens at the high school, see what happens at the middle school or any of our schools at Crestwood. And I guarantee you, every person is there is for your child.
And I'm just going to jump off of everybody, really. Our purpose is not to suspend or discipline these kids. I love them all, really, and I enjoy going to work and being able to laugh and joke with them. The last thing we want to do is have to deal with that discipline piece. So just know that we are not looking for it at all. We want to be able to support them in their activities and walking into their classrooms and doing all of those things. Just know that we want what's best for all of our students, safety, success, academic success, all of those things.
Well, I want to add, you know, that all of your statements represent around building relationships, caring for the kids, but the key piece being that empathy is taking an opportunity to teach and to allow students to grow, but also holding everyone accountable, and that's key. Because accountability is something that all of our students, all of us, are going to have to deal with or deal with. And it's very important. But how we hold them accountable is also more important. I can say that I remember in 2019, it was the board meeting that I was going to be voted in as superintendent. And my current associate superintendent, Mrs. Andrea O'Hara, who was a teacher at the time, had come to me and said to me, I need to talk to you about a student that's going for expulsion. And she brought it to me, and she explained it to me, and she looked at me and said, will you expel this student? And I said, absolutely not. Because this student has not had the opportunity and or options to improve at this point. And I made it very clear as a new superintendent that that would be our focus and our goal. And then, we all know, March of 2020 rolled in, and then everything got slowed down for a little bit. Resilience and empathy is also important to me as a superintendent, because we also understand that everyone makes mistakes. There's a gentleman, Mr. Gary Torgel. He is the president of Huntington Bank. He is the sponsor of the Huntington Scholarship, which comes out to our students. And you're talking about over tens of thousands of dollars that come to our students. A partnership that was created new 2 years ago. When he interviews the students for the Huntington Bank Scholarship, he tells everyone, and everyone at the table, this is the chairman and CEO of Huntington Bank, everyone makes mistakes. And if we're going to judge people solely on the mistakes they make and not on the accomplishments and or what they give the community, then we have failed as in humanity. And I'm going to send this to Mr. Gary Torgel so he can see it. Because this gentleman has taught me a lot as well. And I think what we need to do as a community is understand mistakes will happen. It's my responsibility as a superintendent to ensure that when those mistakes do occur, we work on resolving them and identifying processes to help alleviate those types of mistakes. Because as one community, we have to teach our children and everyone how to be resilient when they make a mistake or when somebody else makes a mistake, but also empathetic to the needs of those around us. Because we are in this together. There's no one at this table, nor anyone in this school district, that isn't here for our children and our community. I, as superintendent of schools, come from this community. This community is me, and I am this community. And I will always go to bat for our community. With that said, I think it's very important that we all understand that everyone here is together. And I want to thank our panelists. I mean, our panelists, Mr. Roni Abdulhadi, Mrs. Marwa Haidar, Mr. Scott Casebolt, and Mrs. Sarah Collada, for your invaluable contributions today. Their expertise in cultivating empathy and resilience is making a significant difference in our schools and our community. To everyone in our Crestwood community, parents, students, and staff, your engagement is crucial in making our educational journey successful. Your support turns our vision into realities. And as Mr. Abdulhadi said, visit our schools. Our doors are open. When you walk through our hallways and you walk through our classrooms and you talk with our students, you will see that our diversity is what makes us great. There is no other district I want to be part of other than the Crestwood School District. As we move forward, I want you to stay tuned for our next episode with engaging and insightful discussions here on District Discourse. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with as many people as you want in your network. Help us spread the message of empathy and resilience far and wide. Until next time, keep the discourse alive, and let's keep connecting on all that matters in our Crestwood community.